no one's playing those red decks, Painful Truths is really a great spot right now.
I think it's a card that's poised for an upswing with very little Atarka red in the format right now, certainly compared to the Pro Tour. I think that card is so good in all the mid-range matchups. Even against a deck like Bant Megamorph that does apply some pressure, I still think it's going to be a positive contributor for Vaughan in the matchup.
All right, underway. Both players starting to land. For Rudy was Lumbering Falls, leads into a turn 2 Warden of the First Tree. So he passed back to Robert Vaughan. So Rudy will be time walked a bit there on his 1-drop. Robert starts with a 2-drop. That's Seeker of the Way.
And we saw this from JD and Clomperens the last round. Comes into play tap land on the first turn, often begets more lands that come into play tapped, because then your fetch lands are searching for battle lands to get the colored mana online, and a lot of things end up coming into play tapped.
We have seen that in mana-based development. It's why people have gotten away from those lands from cons, the tri-lands, away from some of these tap lands, and really go for fetches and battle lands.
The Lumbering Falls is a different sort of card. It is something that does dramatically improve your control matchups, so it's not in there necessarily just to fix mana. I'm sure it's in here mostly because Briksza is just in the market for a creature land.
Yeah. Turn 3, Rudy's going to go ahead and play a Den Protector face down. So go back over to Vaughn's side. He does have 3 basics in play. It'll be Ruinous Path on the Den Protector, Trigger for Seeker of the Way. It'll hit in. Rudy takes 3, goes down to 16 for Vaughan. It is back up above 20 with Lifelink.
You can see Vaughan with Painful Truth in hand. No blue mana just yet, and most of that is just coming off of fetch lands, finding battle lands, either Prairie Stream or Sunken Hollow. He would really like to find that blue mana and pull ahead big time with Painful Truths.
Warden of the First Tree will turn into a 3/3 and swing in, and Rudy will wrap the Seeker of the Way in Silk. So no creatures on Robert's side, so we pass back. For Rudy, that next land is going to be make or break, depending on whether there's a kill spell on Robert's side. He's sitting on 1, maybe even 2 Wingmate rocks here. If he can raid those, that seems like a path to victory. But as just a 3/4, I like Robert's side of it.
It's a big turn here for Vaughan. He has to decide between, do I play Seeker away, take a hit, and hope to draw blue mana next turn for Painful Truths, or do I just suck it up and draw 2 right now, hope to answer the board? If he casts Painful Truths here, and Briksza is able to find land number 5, Briksza pulls very far ahead. But that might be unavoidable, because it's not like Seeker of the Way can block next turn. It's 2/2 against a 3/3.
Yeah, you see some of the options. So Seeker of the Way, Painful Truths, you mentioned both of those. Maybe, I think Knight of the White Orchid, that's not castable right now. Plays Seeker, no land, go. Can Briksza hit land 5? Here's a swing with a 3/3. That'll get in Robert back down to 16. No land yet. It looks like it's a reprieve for Vaughan. Nissa Vastwood Seer, though, from Rudy. It wasn't a land draw, but it was close. He gets a forest and plays it, which means next turn we should expect 2 birds.
It's not a land, but it's the next best thing.
2 attackers and land 5. Means, yeah, he should get to raid this. And Robert, man, missing that 1 land drop is really coming back to bite him. Ends up having to cast Painful Truths on 2 anyway. Draw 2, lose 2. There's the fetch land he was looking for. But he swings in for 3. Briksza will go down to 12. Vaughan back up to 17. Post-combat, it'll be Shambling Vent and a pass. We go over to Briksza. Swing for 5. Warden is still a 3/3. Nissa makes it 5. And here comes Wingmate Rock and its token. Both players at 12, but Rudy with the superior board. 6 power in the air represents a 2-turn clock, as well as having 2 creatures on the ground. Robert's draw is Gideon, but he's very far behind.
And Vaughan has gotten very little to prime the pump as far as his delve cards are concerned over here. No fetch lands on his draw, and very slow in terms of spells. So the Murderous Cut in his hand, usually one of the more efficient removal spells in Standard, has just not been something he could cast.
And it does one thing about the Esper token strategy. It seems difficult for this deck to be able to play from behind on this kind of board.
Well, it's hard for it to play from behind against flyers. On the ground, you have Gideon and you have Secure the Waste. Those are great answers to ground-based threats, but flyers, it is a vulnerability.
Knight of the White Orchid will go ahead and get him a Plains. That'll be land number 5. Gets Prairie Stream, now has all his colors online. But he'll still have to stem the damage flow here. If he can get maybe a kill spell here off on one of the 2 Whip Birds, it'd be a great start for him. Looks like he has a copy of Murderous Cut in hand, so he can take care of a Wingmate Rock. Seeker of the Way will swing in.
I would assume we're going to see a no block here from Rudy.
Yeah, it looks like there was not a block made. So now Vaughan will fetch down to 11. Seeker of the Way's done a great job in gaining life. This is going to be the 9th point of life gain that Seeker of the Way's given him.
Yep, has helped Vaughan keep his head above water in spite of these early stumbles. I think he's still in trouble, but it is not over just yet.
Vaughan going to secure the wastes for 2. And he's setting up here for a Murderous Cut. Wants to get as much onto the board as possible. He's going to prowess it twice. So secure for 2, followed by Murderous Cut. Takes care of the Wingmate Rock. Pumps Seeker of the Way to a 4-4. Briksza will be down to 8. Vaughan up to 15 off that connection. You see now why he wanted Rudy to try to block with the bird. He would have gotten both flyers if Rudy had.
Yeah, and Rudy, there's just no reason for him to risk it. His flyers are so valuable that even though maybe he didn't know the sequence of cards that Vaughan was trying to set up, there's no reason to risk anything.
On Rudy's side, look at the remaining 2 cards in his hand. He has a Stratus Dancer and another Wingmate Rock. He'll start by swinging the Warden. Robert down to 12. Rudy will try it again. Last time he made a pair of flyers. Now let's have 2 more birds to add to the Air Force. Robert was able to pump the Seeker to a 4-4 and kill 1 bird. Rudy challenging Robert to do it again. Robert getting lower on cards, however. And not much time. Rudy has a 9 power in the air. Robert has no flying blockers.
I was going to say that no attack from the rock token seemed a little passive there from Briksza, but I guess he's respecting Vaughan's ability to prowess the Seeker and just gain a bunch of life here next turn. So he'd rather just make attacking prohibitive for Vaughan this turn rather than turn the game into a pure race.
Yeah, if Briksza had swung the 3-4, he'd have Vaughan at 9, which means that the board would be lethal in the air. So there is a lot of appeal to do that. But you're right. If he assumes that Robert's going to swing the Seeker of the Way, then that's not really changing the clock, I suppose. It's 2 turns regardless. But he can't give Robert forever. Robert could always make another Secure the Waste into Gideon and simply win the game out of nowhere. Seeker of the Waste swings in from Vaughan. Briksza taking no chances. Here's 2 3-4s. Vaughan will secure for 6 and gain 3 life off that Seeker.
Yeah, very good double block there from Rudy. You don't want to risk the rock itself because that's going to gain life off the attach trigger. But I think Briksza is saying in that spot, your hand's a removal spell and another spell. That's fine. Show it to me.
Don't use the wrong kind of token. We have something else we can use. Just like flip it face over. Don't use the wrong. So now a total of 8 creatures in play for Vaughan. It's still not lethal. He has Rudy down to 8, so 9-5. Robert has him outnumbered on creatures. That's not enough damage by itself, but if you add a Gideon emblem to it, the 4 unblocked creatures does represent a lethal attack.
Well, Rudy can pick up a lot of life here. He can attack. If he wants to, he can throw a Warden into the mix. The Warden is lethal alongside the Flyers. He gets 1 more life out of his trouble, and it forces a chump block. Rudy can also try to do it like this, where he's killing over the course of 2 turns.
So here's a swing. Rudy will go to 10. It's 6 damage in the air. Robert will drop to 9. You're right. And Warden can get activated here if he had with 1 more mana and even could get Trample Lifelink. Looks like Rudy will play a Morph, though. So now with only 3 mana up, he's not able to activate the Warden to level 2. And we look at Robert's hand. I believe he has the Gideon. 8 creatures, but Rudy's at 10.
4 blockers available.
If Robert has another land, he can land, Gideon, activate Shambling Vent, and I believe that's enough.
Yep, and Vaughn's dead next turn, so he's got to go for it. But I believe he has just enough mana, and if the last card's Gideon, he can fire up the vent, make an emblem, and get exact lethal.
Wow, and he may just have it. So he has a total of 9 creatures, left 10 attackers. Rudy has 4 blockers. 6 creatures will get through. And that should be enough. Rudy with 4 blockers says, yeah, 6 get through. That's 12. Gideon Emblem. Rudy, see, counts it out. It is, yeah, confirmed 8 tokens, a Knight of the White Orchid, and a Shambling Vent. The flip is Stratus Dancer from Rudy, and Robert Vaughan, off the back of that, Secure the Waste. Gideon finishes able to take game 1 off Rudy Briksza.
And is Rudy able to survive that turn if he just leaves mana up for Warden to gain lifelink instead of playing the Stratus Dancer?
Well, then instead of having 4 blockers, Rudy has 3 blockers. So 14 damage gets through. Rudy gains 3 off the block. That puts him up to 13, but the 7 unblocked 2-power creatures still is lethal through a life gain of 3.
Sure, I believe he's plus 1 point of life by pumping there.
However, there is, if he has the blue mana, I don't know if he did there, but if he plays Stratus Dancer face up and leaves up 4 mana to activate the Warden of the First Tree.
Then he covers it.
Then 12 damage through unblocked, 3 life gain, Rudy's at 1.
Now there's other considerations there on Rudy's side. For example, you have a Stratus Dancer face down, and there's spells that could matter out of Vaughn's deck. So it's not simple. But I think if he was literally only playing around Gideon there was a way for Briksza to manage that.
Yeah, and I don't know if he has the... I want to be careful because I'm not positive he has the blue mana. But if he has the blue mana...
He had the Lumbering Falls.
He had the Lumbering Falls. So then if he has Stratus Dancer face up, that should be enough to survive that attack. But, I mean, you have to really be keen to what you're playing around and nothing else to make that line.
Right.
Well, anyway, we go to game 2 here. So let's looking over at the sideboard. Starting on Rudy Briksza's side, he is down a game to Esper tokens. We see Surge of Righteousness, Erishan Cleric, Mastery the Unseen, Valor Stance, Felidar Cub, Evolutionary Leap, Dragon Lord Dromoka, 3 Disdainful Stroke, and a Dispel.
Definitely like the 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke and the 1 Dispel in this matchup. I think Briksza's got an edge in this matchup as long as he prevents Vaughan from resolving any of his big stuff or setting up his Secure the Waste plus Gideon combo kill that you saw in that game. So Dispel and 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke do a lot of work there.
On Robert Vaughn's side, for Esper tokens, he has a lot of 1s and 2s, some different methods of attack. So we Mastery the Unseen, Knight of the White Orchid, Languish, Archangel of Tithes, Surge of Righteousness, Negate, Dispel, Disdainful Stroke, Dragonlord Silumgar, Duress, and even Planar Outburst. So a lot of ways to really go bigger in the matchup.
And I like Vaughan taking that position in the matchup here. The Dragonlord Silumgar, his 2 copies of Archangel of Ties, the Languish, some mixture of counter spells here, I think is a good setup for Vaughan.
How about Planar Outburst? That's not something I would expect to see from this kind of token-style strategy.
Yeah, and if Briksza's not anticipating this kind of game, he may not be able to beat a sweeper like that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see this normally in Esper token sideboards. It really could catch Rudy off guard. So, interesting line of play. If he goes on that, then he goes into cards like Mastery of the Unseen as well?
Maybe. That's a little bit rougher here because your enchantments are a little bit vulnerable against Bam Megamorph. I don't know exactly how deep down that well he wants to go. Also, Briksza can get some pretty fast starts, and Vaughan doesn't have that many sweepers to go to. I think it's just a part of a multi-dimensional plan.
Yeah, certainly when you have a card like Secure the Wastes, it lets you board into sweepers because those tokens can just bring you back so fast.
I think Archangel of Tithe is also going to be great in this matchup here. Not an easy card for Briksza to get off the table. And if Vaughan happens to sideboard into something, if Briksza rather happens to sideboard into something like Match the Unseen, Archangel of Tithe is not an answer directly, but it is good against that card.
All right, Robert Vaughan on a mulligan. One thing we do at Star City Games, though, our role at the beginning of this year, we started Star City Games Game Night. If you haven't been familiar, this is happening all over the country at stores near you. Find a store near you that's participating in SCG Game Night and win exclusive tokens and pins given out as prizes every single week. This month, in November, we've been giving away the Otter pins. You've seen them on our coats, and they're available on tokens at your store. Next month, we're going to get a little more festive. We'll be giving away the Caribou token, the reindeer, just in time for the holidays. And if your store signs up, if you don't have a store near you, talk to your store, get them to sign up, and they can sign up in time for the January promo. And this one's my favorite one. It's Grizzly Brand. He's the Demon Bear.
And you can go over to StarCityGames.com/game night for more information, or contact your Star City Games in-store play representative. For Canadian stores and players, we've changed our shipping rates. We are now just charging U.S. domestic shipping rates to send these kits out. So if you've not gotten Game Night in your store because of shipping rates in the past, that's changed. So again, contact your Star City Games in-store play representative, talk to your store owner, or head over to the website at StarCityGames.com/game night.
All right, back here. So Vaughan, he's on 6 on the draw, has kept. it appears. Robert deciding to keep on 6. Rudy mulliganing to 5, down a game here. Not entirely wants to see a wingmate rock in that 5-card hand, but he'll keep scry to the bottom for both. And it is Rudy on the play, so he'll be -2 cards here. Does have an early silk wrap. Starts the game. 2 lands. This is actually pretty decent hand. He has a Warden of the First Tree, 2 lands, and an early removal spell.
It's not a bad hand, but he has to draw very well to make something out of this, because if his Warden dies, he's got nothing going on. Or if he just misses land drops, he's got very little going on. And if Vaughan doesn't cooperate with these silk wraps and present targets, Rudy's hand doesn't do anything.
Yeah, you're right. A removal spell really tears this hand apart, and that silk wrap turn 2 from Robert is exactly that. Rudy just playing Prairie Stream and passes.
It's a hand that looks fine on the surface, but there's just a lot of things that can go wrong.
The removal spell certainly was part of it. And we see Knight of the White Orchid in play for Robert. Rudy had an opportunity to deny the mana exile, but probably too costly for him.
I don't know in spots like that. Are you supposed to not play your 3rd land now with Knight of the White Orchid index? Because Rudy, you know, if he draws a 3-mana spell, he can play his land and cast it. I suppose the reason to play your 3rd land is if you draw Nissa, you want to be able to play Nissa, play your 4th land, untap, draw your 5th land, play Wingmate Rock. But now in spots like this, in these kind of matchups where your opponent has Knight, your land drops become a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, there is something. So say if his next 2 draws are lands 4 and land 5, and he has this Wingmate Rock, he certainly will have wished he played the land.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's time-walking himself. But I completely understand. Now Robert is accelerated into 2 Knights. And with Rudy missing land 4, you feel like he gave Robert a free card.
Yep.
And here's a Knight of the White Orchid from Robert and a Wingmate Rock rated. That's something that Rudy will likely not be able to deal with here. Fetches for Death Mist Raptor and passes the turn, but there's a ton of damage coming Rudy's way.
Yep. Wingmate Rock seems like just the most important cards in most of these mid-range creature matchups.
Yeah, I was going to say, boy, Wingmate Rock certainly has looked good today. You watch each of these games and you feel like that's just the late game that they're building toward. It's
I know,
right?
Vaughan purchased a lot of copies of this card before rotation and said, I have a feeling this is going to end up being really important. And
I bet that's paying dividends right now.
yeah, I'm sure he's fine with it.
Murderous Cut takes care of Death Mist Raptor. Here's a swing for 8. Robert gaining 3 to 20. Rudy down to 9. 1 card left in Vaughan's hand, but with no true sweepers in Rudy's deck, coming back in this game just seems so difficult. And that will be a concession from Rudy. So a mull to 5 does not help him there. 2-0 though. Robert Vaughan gets win number 6 on the day.
Not a lot to be said about that second game. Rudy mulliganed and had his 1 threat killed, never really got anything going on. That first game was pretty fascinating, and I would like to go back and give that one a second watch because, you know, it's risky, of course, to put the Stratus Dancer face up, and there's a lot of things you're potentially playing around there, but I think if you're literally only trying to be Gideon off the top, Rudy might have had the tools to do it.
Yeah, and I think, especially in that game, because if Robert had end step secure the wasted and then made a Gideon, I understand Rudy not playing around it, but because